Hi, I'm Perry Atkinson, General Manager here at theDove. Hey, check out our other videos and check out our website at thedove.us. Welcome back. Well, it's always an honor to have with us Jordan Sekulow. He is the Executive Director of American Citizen for Law and Justice, and he's a regular guest here on theDove, and we want to say thanks for his time. And Jordan, good to see you, my friend. I know you're busy, but we value the few moments you give us. How you doing?
Hey, thanks, Perry. Thanks for having me.
Well, listen, 2-year anniversary now of Pastor Abedini's incarceration. In fact, special prayer all over the country. We actually had a prayer vigil here in Southern Oregon for him. How's he doing?
You know, he's hanging in there. It's a difficult time now that he's marked, 2 years in prison. And you can think about, as I was with Naghmeh Abedini and Franklin Graham, actually, in Washington, D.C. a few days ago, as we kicked off the over 600 prayer vigils that happened. Let me thank the people who were at the prayer vigil that you had right there, because it takes every one of those to kind of get to those numbers, and also the attention that it brings to the case, along with, of course, the power of prayer that we believe in. His medical condition still, in a tough spot. Is not back in a hospital, still is in a prison, Raja Shar, and is actually facing some new threats from members of the Islamic State who were arrested by the Iranians, have been apprehended by the Iranians because the Iranians are Shia and the Islamic State is Sunni. And so even though they are both, Iran, a state sponsor of terrorism, and the Islamic State, a terrorist organization, that you've actually got a situation where they're fighting each other. And so these fighters who were in the same prison as Saeed have made threats on his life. So there's these new concerns. Basically, anything that's happening in this region ends up affecting Saeed. And so while we had the UN General Assembly and we know our leaders were meeting with the Iranian officials and there's key dates coming up in the next couple of months, we always have those two goals. One is to keep him alive, and the second is to ultimately get him home. I think the nuclear negotiations have certainly complicated things even more so when it comes to his release.
How do you connect with him? How are you getting in contact with him?
So he still has family in Iran, and one of the key issues has always been visitation. Mm-hmm. And there have been times when he's been denied that. But because of the U.S. engagement with Iran on the nuclear issue, they are doing a lot, Perry, to make sure on some basic things. One of those is the visitation. So the family is able to visit about once a week, and that's the only way we get the information. And so he was able, we released last week a letter that he had written to his daughter. He's able to get that to family members who can see him in these visitations. And so that's basically how we get the information. So it's usually weekly. Now, when he was in the hospital, his family got to be around a lot more, and that was a couple of months ago, and he was there for about 6 weeks. So that was when we really got to put together the full scope of what had happened over at that time about the last couple of years. So, it's a situation. He's missed birthdays. His kids are, who I've spent a lot of time with throughout this process, are now 8 and 6 years old, 8-year-old daughter, 6-year-old son. They're, birthdays are going by, holidays are going by, and they're getting to that age where they really realize what's going on. At first, when this happened, we didn't put them in any of kind of the what was going out there, because they were at an age where it wasn't really the right thing to do. Now they know they figured out there's something bigger at stake here, and so the impact it has on the family as well is huge. And so I think that we're doing everything we can. We working at the United Nations and of course with our government here.
Well, Jordan, is there any movement by this administration? I mean, it seems like the president and the secretary of state are constantly silent when it comes to Saeed.
Yeah, I mean, they make their statements. There was a positive statement by Secretary Kerry last month about Saeed, and he actually praised Naghmeh, Saeed's wife, and her advocacy. And I will tell you, she's a tireless advocate. I think we did probably, along with the vigil that we did with Reverend Graham here in Washington, and the radio interviews and things like that, I think, in a couple of days with her kids here, we're talking about a woman who has traveled the world advocating for her husband. And so the Secretary of State, John Kerry, even acknowledged that. And what the key is that in these negotiations with Iran, and this is something we've been very clear about. Senator Ted Cruz wrote a new op-ed today that's out in Politico magazine about this as well. The idea that we cannot continue these negotiations with Iran until the Americans, like Saeed, Amir Hekmati and a Washington Post journalist who was recently arrested are returned. So it's not to say that the U.S. government, no one's saying they can't have the negotiations at all. But how about we let the Iranians know clearly that, we're not going to get sanctions relief, and we're not going to keep going to the table, spending days and hours, months, and weeks and months, and possibly years in these nuclear negotiations while you're holding our citizens basically hostage to those negotiations. And so we have to deal with the very real situation here geopolitically, and that's that a nation which has not had a diplomatic relationship with Iran since 1979 and their revolution is now sitting at the table. Some can see that as positive. And the positive that come from that, Perry, are that when there are issues at the prison, the U.S. government has been able to communicate that to the Iranian officials directly. They don't have to go through back channels. And we've seen some positive impact there. So I don't want to take any impact away from what the U.S. government's been able to do. But it does not seem, and I hope I'm wrong, and I hope I'm surprised and that this statement's not accurate, but as I want to tell people as best I know, that this is a top priority for the U.S. government. The nuclear negotiations seem like priority one, and then there's a big gap, and then you get down to the Americans who are being held and detained by Iran and charged with serious crimes and serious sentences and have been punished in ways, not just their sentence, but the way they've been treated physically and psychologically. And so, we just have to keep praying. We have to keep working. And it was, I think, very encouraging for all of us and for Saeed's family to see the outpouring of support 2 years into this from people all over the world. There were vigils, over 600 vigils total, and in 39 countries and territories. So it was very different than what we even had the year before.
Wow. Given the recent beheadings of people, I mean, you would think that the intolerance from these terrorists as it relates to Christianity is at an all-time high. That could be a little scary. But on the other hand, you have all of these prayer vigils going on. I mean, this is really a spiritual war here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was actually yesterday on Fox News early in the morning talking about the beheading in Oklahoma. And the idea here that is it terrorism in the classic sense of the term? Was he coordinating with a terrorist organization? We don't know that yet. But even if that wasn't happening, this was someone who was extremely sympathetic. And one of the reasons why these groups like the Islamic State put out these videos, horrific videos, is not just to try to scare us. And they're not scaring the U.S. armed forces from fighting. I mean, that's the bottom line truth. But it is gruesome. It is very tough. And, of course, it makes news. But also, it's to inspire. That was the name of the Al-Qaeda magazine that told the Boston bombers how to build those pressure cooker bombs. This is these kind of images, though it's horrifying to most of us, and that's a normal response. There are some people out there that this triggers, and whether they're angry at their work and they converted to Islam in a prison and they've got kind of tough records, the idea that they see this imagery now all of a sudden they're beheading people instead of what may have been quote, and it's not nice to say, but normal workplace violence versus Islamic terror-inspired workplace violence.
Wow. So where do we go from here? Keep praying. What else?
Well, we've got a lot of work coming up in the next 6 weeks, and we've got teams all over the world. We have a team right now. I just got an email from them. They met with the Vatican yesterday. We have a on-site situation, and the Vatican played a key role along with Italy in the release of Miriam Ibrahim, which Naghmeh Abedini, Pastor Saeed's wife, spoke with at a dinner Saturday night in Washington, D.C. And so they both were speakers on the persecuted church. The UN just released a report. It's the UN Human Rights Council, and this is pretty rare, that Saeed is illegally been detained, so he's illegally imprisoned, and that he must be released and then compensated for every day he's been in prison. Now, we're not holding out hope that Iran is ever going to do that, but it's a big deal that the UN Human Rights Human Rights Council did that. We're going to keep working here in Washington, working with the State Department, working with members of Congress. They're engaged on this as well, and we need everybody out there to keep praying, keep sharing those stories. I think if they did go out to a prayer vigil and prayed for Saeed and the persecuted church, and just to keep working on this.
All right. Thank you, Jordan. Thanks for all that you do there at American Center for Law and Justice. And ACLJI. Let me encourage you to go to their website and support what they do. Thanks, my friend. Keep us in touch on this and let us know. We'll certainly continue to pray, but keep us updated and let us know on any of the other hot issues. Thanks, man, for what you guys do back there.
Will do. Thanks, Barry.
All right,
Thanks,
talk to you soon. All right, we'll be right back.